that was the first time that I couldn't push through. Because normally I just force myself. And I was like, but I can't. I physically can't. So where do I go from here?
Welcome to Who's Missing, a podcast that gets you thinking about who's missing from your world, at work and in life. Today, we're talking to Arionne Nettles, a fellow Chicagoan and a wonderful human being who you will want to follow on all the things after you hear our interview. She's a journalist. She is the director of audio journalism programming at Northwestern University, and she's currently getting her PhD in educational leadership from DePaul University. She joins us today to discuss how she engages with her audience, whether it's her students, her readers, or her colleagues, her holistic approach to teaching, and a bout of depression that came during what is arguably the height of her career. And of course, we're not going to leave it there. We're going to talk about how she got through it too. When I think of Arionne, the word that comes to mind for me is compassion. I'm Emily Drake, and this is Who's Missing. We haven't met. Is it fair to say I slipped into your DMs? Is that fair? That's how we met?
You know what? I think that we have been following each other on multiple social media platforms for a while.
So when I was thinking about, Christina said, tell me more about Arionne. And I was like, look, there's just people in the world that you're like, I'm going to follow you, I'm going to support you, and I don't know you, and I don't need to know you to know that I'm about you. Like I'm interested in you and you're interesting. So let me just draw this parallel and you tell me if I'm digging down the wrong hole. In journalism, there is an expectation that there be facts, objectivity. So to turn to the screen, I'm assuming in your home, and say, let me watch Swarm for a variety. And for our listeners, I'm not watching it yet. Maybe you are. I would love for you to talk about how those two things are different and how, as a person taking them in, maybe they help you balance your identities. I don't know.
Oh, yeah. No, I love that because I think that when you feel like you are inundated with facts and fact checking and trying to tell people the truth or trying to make sure people are telling the truth and all of that, it really can be a lot, and it can be heavy too. And so when I watch TV, a lot of the times I want escapism. Mm-hmm. It can have a meaning, it can tell other stories, but I don't necessarily need it to feel lifelike. And I think that that's the difference, because I think a lot of the criticism that I've seen, for example, for this, and so for the audience or for people who have not seen the premise of this, and this is not a spoiler, there is a Black woman and she is the super fan of a Beyonce-like superstar, and she is killing people who say bad things about this superstar whose name is Naija in the series. Mm-hmm. And that is so ridiculous that I can watch it because I know that that's not going to happen to me, right? It doesn't have to make sense. It can abruptly stop and be weird, and we're like, well, that was weird. Okay, moving on.
More weird.
Give us more weird. Everything doesn't have to make sense.
No, I'm just thinking as you're talking, one of the things that came to mind is I feel like I work in a field and it's make it make sense though, right? It has to make sense, and that's what our minds are designed for. And so to have something be so irrational and so frivolous and sort of preposterous, it's especially for adults, it's good on ya, right? Enjoy. Just let it be a thing. Right?
Exactly. And we try to push that on kids, and they're like, we just want to have fun. I just want to draw some shapes. I don't need this to be a thing.
Well, I got to learn all the time.
Right.
I'm curious with your own expression and, is journalism, is it an art? Is it a skill? Is it a craft? What do we call it?
I think it's a craft. I think sometimes I do certain stories and it feels like an art. I use the example of, what we call an anecdotal lead. And that is the difference from like a straight news lead. So a straight news lead is if you say basically just the who, what, when, where, why, or however many of those you can fit in that first sentence of a news story, where it's just like, Senate voted to increase or decrease food SNAP assistance on Thursday, blah, 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 right? Like, that's just a straight thing. And a lot of times you, on staff, you have just updates. You just got to get that information out. That's what you do. Versus you're doing like a more in-depth feature-y story where you can make this really creative anecdotal lead. You find somebody that kind of embodies the type of person you want people to meet, somebody that's like maybe being impacted by this legislation, right? You get to talk about somebody who could used to buy this with their SNAP benefits, but now because of policy changes, they'll only be able to buy this, right? But all of the things that this person struggles with. So as the reader, if I do my job right, the reader can really connect with this person. They should be able to understand real people, and it should feel not just like a little piece of legislation, but it should feel good. And when I can do stuff like that, it feels like an art form.
I'm thinking about one of your pieces, and I'm just going to pick one. There's so many, but I'm thinking in particular about Black mothers on gun violence. When you ship that out into the world, do you interact with it once it's gone off your desktop? Do you interact with the comments, the community? Do you become a spokesperson, or do you let it go and kind of move on to the next? What's your relationship with a piece like that?
So I usually do share it. I communicate with people who I think are good people to communicate with. And I say that because I don't know if that's everybody's approach, but I very strongly feel like trying to communicate with people who are full of hate is just a waste of time. I don't have time to teach people. Yeah, hello. I'm not teaching racist grown people who could pick up a book for free. That's not who I volunteer my time to. I, for example, never read the comments on a story. So that story, it was published in a lot of places because we had a lot of publishing partners, but when it was in the New York Times, I specifically did not read the comment section, but I know they were horrible because my associate dean called me and she was like, I just want to make sure you're okay, because I looked at the comment section and they were rough. And I mean, just what I did see, I had people emailing Northwestern telling them to fire me. It gets really big and bad and people turn ugly. And I saw a lot of racist comments directed towards me, like by email, and people telling you to kill yourself. Like, I mean, it can get really ugly. And that is just what came to me, like not even what I went to look for. If a tweet that I tweet gets a lot of attention, most of those people will be people I really know or people who know people I know. And the benefit of that is that I have a really strong community. And a lot of times those people also will not allow other people to just talk to me crazy. And if somebody does, I've gotten better at just blocking it and trying to move on. I've also found that depending on the story, it is important for me to still be visible. So, for example, one time I did a story about Ida B. Wells, and I did it for WBEZ's Curious City. A Black woman had a concern about something she thought I left out of the story. So I responded to her and I let her know what was my thinking, either behind leaving it out or making it just a smaller mention or whatever. And she was like, oh, my bad, sis. Like, I didn't mean to call you out. And I think that she probably, in her anger, was like, wow, like, I'm tired of these mainstream organizations messing up our stories. And so she didn't necessarily see this as me, another Black woman, researching and then making the decision on what to include or what not to include or whatever. She saw it as, I don't like what was presented by this place.
Did your mom always know you'd be who you are? Did you always know?
No, I can see now like certain things when I was younger that I liked to do, but I went to business school. I was very much I want to make sure that I'm financially stable. what do you major in to be financially stable? I guess business. So I did not think I was going to be in any realm of journalism. But I did do some things. Like, I forget that I was a kid reporter one time. It was like one summer. We covered like the Democratic National Convention in 96. I like wrote for a newspaper thing. Like, they had like a teenager submission, and I wrote about like going on an HBCU tour. So like I've like done like also, it's all these little things where I'm like, oh yeah, I did do that. I did do that. I did do that. So I think I knew I liked stories, but I don't thought about journalism as a field. I didn't know any journalists. I didn't know journalism was a job.
Arionne's choice for this week's spotlight is the Girls in the Hood Foundation. That's girls with a Y, and HOOD is an acronym. H for healthy, O for optimistic and outstanding, and D for determined. Girls in the Hood Foundation. There's a lot packed into that because their mission is really important to increase positive reproductive health outcomes among adolescent females in urban areas considered the hood, and also to redefine negative stereotypes placed on girls based on their zip codes. If you'd like to learn more, visit www.girlsinthehood.com. Again, that's girls with a Y, GYRLS. And now, back to the show. My parents said to me, the only two things I could not do as a profession were be a teacher or be a cop, a police officer. And, you know, the second one maybe makes sense for a myriad of reasons. The first one I was a little confused by, and lo and behold, here I am, right? And here you are. We're all teaching, right? If you choose to put the hat on every day of like being of service. And one of the words I wrote down as you were talking, Arionne, is empathy. I mean, I hear so much empathy and compassion in how you speak about a profession that is really important, but also just your role in the world. Like you choose every morning, it sounds like, to be that person.
Yeah. And I struggle when I can't, when I'm not mentally there. It's really hard for me. A lot of that is not good either. Like, I mean, in the bad sense of the word, like I take evaluations really hard. Because mentally I'll be like, wait, you don't understand how much effort it took me to do X, Y, Z, and you don't even appreciate it. I am very sensitive about the role and how I try to help people, but I do know that I'm not perfect, and so I try to, like, for example, I was at breakfast with a student, and I trust this student, and so I just asked her a lot of questions about the last time she took a class with me and about things that maybe I could do better. Kind of surveying people, but like surveying them in a way where I can protect my feelings. So I think that's what I've been working on. Is like, how do I still get the information though? Because I know that I need critique. Like, I want to be better. Like, I never want to teach the same course the same way twice. Like, it should always, every time I teach it, it should be better.
Right. It's not all or nothing. It's not like I don't hear anything or I hear all of it. You know, this is to me, as I hear you, I'm thinking about like the wisdom of just knowing who you are and not judging it, but accepting it and saying like, and I'm open to this, right? Yeah. It's really powerful.
And I've always been this way. So it's not even like I'm just this way in this situation.
No surprises, Yeah,
it's not a surprise. I remember like all the times in school where my teacher yelled at me because I cried. Every time a teacher yelled at me, I remember what I did, what exactly that teacher said, how I felt, and how I cried. And I'm just really sensitive that way. And so it's like, if you were sensitive that way 30 years ago, you're still going to be that sensitive now. So how can I work with it? My sensitivity generally allows me to be rather empathetic.
Yeah. I hear you saying, and this is something I believe, and I think, you know, in the mental health world, something we're talking about more, like compassion has compound interest. It's like, it is regenerative. You see what I'm saying? Like, you give, and then it like, And I loved what you said earlier about like blocking out the people who are here with hate, the people who are here to fight, because you're not coming with what I'm coming with. We're not having a conversation. You're here to like beat in a point, and that's not interesting, right? Like that's not intimacy. And part of what I was thinking as you were talking was like, you get your business school degree, you transition into, you know, the world of journalism, you find yourself now in a teaching position. And then, you know, part of me is like, I don't need you to make it make sense, but you're getting your PhD now too. You got a book coming out this summer.
Yes.
So like
now it's actually going to come out in 2024 because
we know how that goes.
I did. I was trying to do a little too much. And my beautiful, amazing editor and my publisher was like, okay, let's be real. And she really worked with me and helped me. And like, speaking of, you know, mental health, like not to interrupt, but I was the most depressed I've ever been in my life. I was so depressed, I could not open it up. I just let her know, I'm just struggling. Like, I can't do this. And it wasn't even right. The draft was done. This was just going back in to do edits, right? So the part I thought was going to be easy. I was like, I can't move. Like, I have all these things I'm supposed to do, and I keep trying to do this, and I can't do it. And everybody wants me to do something. And every time I think of the things I have to do, I just lay in the bed and I can't move.
Yes.
I just lay here and cry. And if I'm not crying, the world just feels great and I feel emotionless. I just can't do anything. And she really worked with me and said, okay, we just going to push some stuff back. Yeah. And so I'm just so grateful to have people who, instead of like berating you, to say, okay, well, what we going to do? What can we do? And so that is also what I've been trying to do too. Is like, okay, well, what can you do? I'm not telling you what to do, but what can you do? And based off what you think you can do, then I can maybe give you options, right? Because I might say, okay, can you do it by this date? Now, I got high grades in by this date, so that might not work, okay? But what can we do? Okay, let's what do you feel that you can do? And then based off what you can do will dictate what I think I can do for you.
I'm so glad that it wasn't an interruption, because we are having a conversation. To go from MBA at Florida A&M, and then you're getting your master's at Northwestern, and I'm just going to do this again. I'm going to repeat it because I think it's important for people to know. Then you're a professor and a director of audio journalism programming at Northwestern. Like, we're racking it up. We're racking and stacking. And then you decide to get your PhD. And then you're like, if we don't interrupt that whole trajectory to say, oh, by the way, I have never been more depressed in my life. Then people get the mistaken illusion that like this is linear, right? And what I hear you saying is like, the answer when I felt stuck and depressed wasn't do more. Get your shit together, Arionne, right? It was grace. It was compassion. It was like, I need more love and support, please. And that's hard to do. So I'm glad you did it.
Thank you.
How's it feeling now? How are you feeling now?
Oh, now I feel so much better. But it is funny because that was the first time that I couldn't push through.
Yeah.
Because normally I just force myself. And I was like, but I can't. I physically can't. So where do I go from here? And I was like, I'm doing all the things. I'm in therapy, and I have a psychiatrist, and I go to my primary care provider every month. So I was like, I'm checking in with all the doctors. It just was that period where I was just like, yeah. But everybody's like, you're a machine. You're so great. How do you do it? And I'm like, I'm not. For one, I'm not a machine. I'm a person. And I'm physically not doing it. Like, I am like you're telling me, how do you do it? And it's like, I don't.
Yeah, and it's that experience and like, you know, your body doing the talking of like, this will be it now. You will be stopping things now, right? It's powerful. So you start to emerge from the darkness. And, you know, as a fellow traveler with you, I've been there. I've also had my emergence a couple times in my life. Where do you find yourself now, and what are you excited about? You know, I want to be mindful that you've got a new podcast out. Too, right? So like, what are you creating, my friend? Like, I know there's always something moving.
So one thing that I think I started thinking about around that time, as I started kind of like coming up from the gray, was what I can control. And so there's so many things, that we can't control. And a lot of people who grew up feeling like we thought we could control, we can't control.
Yeah.
I'm 37. I turned 38 this year. But out of my group of friends that are like my age, I'm one of the first to seemingly kind of go through this like midlife crisis. But I also was like one of the first to have kids. I got married and divorced really young. So I've done a lot of stuff really early. And so it's kind of like I woke up and I was like, wow, like this is my life and I don't know if I like it. And it wasn't necessarily that I didn't think it was good. I don't know if I chose this, or if this was just a life I ended up in. And if I want something different, I don't know if I'm happy that this is where I'm stuck. Yep. And so just around all of that thinking and doing and stuff, I had been, I'd been freelancing some audio stuff and I'd been trying to do some other stuff. And I was just like, man, I really want to do something that I have a little bit more control over. I had a kids podcast and that got paused indefinitely. At the end of the day, like it can come out when I want it to come out. And if it doesn't come out, then that's fine. But maybe there's something that I can do that's just a little bit more fun.
Mm-hmm. Well, look, I know we're crossing the finish line here. How would you like us to find you and follow you, right? Because you are, and I can say this confidently, you are one to follow.
So generally on Twitter and Instagram the most.
Okay.
And I have made sure that I'm really easy to find. So I'm just my first name and my last name. So just Arionne Nettles on both of those places. Great. And, I try to talk about everything. I actually think that social media is supposed to be fun. And I don't view it as a platform for branding myself. So I'm just really on there to talk mess.
Thank you for being with me today.
This was lovely. Thank you for having me. Yeah, I had so much fun.
Thank you so much. And here to be helpful, we'll be in touch. As always, thank you so much for listening to Who's Missing. If you like this podcast, please subscribe and leave us a review. It only takes a few seconds and truly makes a huge difference. And if you want to hear from us more than just once a week, you can follow us on Instagram or check out our website where you can subscribe to our newsletter, read about our guests, check out a bunch of awesome resources, or send us a message if you have questions or comments. Feedback is welcome. Sounds great, right? Yeah, join us. What are you waiting for? Visit us at www.who'smissingpodcast.com or on IG at Who's Missing Podcast. Talk to you soon.